Welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Our co-hosts, Sri Rajagopalan and Peter V.S. Bond, explore how brands and retailers engage with consumers online, in-store, and everywhere in between. And now, here are Sri and Peter.
Hello, folks, and welcome back to this episode of the CPG Guys podcast. I'm, of course, Sri, one of your aforementioned CPG guys, all the way from the La La Land and the home of the recently concluded Super Bowl 56, the southwest frontier of our great continent, Los Angeles, California, and also now the home of the Super Bowl champions, the LA Rams. Although Peter and I are sad New York Giants fans, but since I live here, at least for 24, 48 hours in a week, I'll bow down in happiness and fame. My co-host, of course, is the VP of Partner Strategy and Dev at Fetch Rewards, a mobile loyalty platform, as we endeavor to explore consumer engagement in a digitally driven world. He's an impresario to the world of loyalty, rewards, and known for producing 6 feet long register receipts. I actually think they're 12 feet long, Peter, when you buy a single product at CVS. So please welcome the man himself with the golden voice, Mr. Bond. How are you, sir?
Hey, Sri, great to be with you. It was nice to be out in LA last week with you and in advance of the game, though I didn't go to the game. It was fun to hang out. We produced some content. We had some great meals. And I got to enjoy the warm weather outside of the frigid Northeast, which has warmed up a little bit this week. But it was always great to be live with you. I miss you already, brother. Love doing this with you.
Likewise, Peter, but it's a cold 55 this afternoon here in LA, and it doesn't look like we're getting back to those 85-degree temperatures anytime soon. And here, when we get 55, we wear parkas and gloves. And thank you, Peter. Let me remind our audience that all of our content that's 175 episodes plus can easily be found. All you got to do is go to a browser and type cpgguys.com. If you aren't already following this growing family on LinkedIn, just enter CPG Guys in the search box. And when you get to our page, simply hit the blue plus button that says follow. That way you'll get to see all of the content we produce. And the best thing about it, we do this for your education. It's free. Did you know we are in partnership with Next Up, the network of executive women now rebranded from New? And in the middle of every Wednesday podcast episode is hidden an Easter egg with a message from Next Up. Download, tune in, and listen. Special thank you to all of our 10K plus followers and growing, Peter. We're already at 10.4 in less than a week and a half. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we have launched, of course, a second podcast across the continent called FMCG Guys, which takes our format of the CPG Guys of omnichannel digital exploration to the European market. Our friends Efrain and Daniel are the hosts based in Europe and will be talking with FMCG retail thought leaders about the transformation happening in Europe. Of course, Peter and I speak frequently with brand marketers, and we hear some common themes around the ad investments. Is my advertising working? What's my ROAS? Am I reaching the right audiences in the most powerful platforms? Are my efforts driving incremental sales? Which of my efforts are driving the most sales amongst a particular buyer group? In this episode, the CPG Guys are therefore partnering with Skai, the artist formerly known as Kenshoo Inc. Skai is the only full go-to-market engine that enables smarter decisions and better outcomes with actionable intelligence in making customer connections. Their platform includes a suite of data-driven products for market intelligence, omnichannel media activation, testing and measurement, enabling brands and agencies to make predictions, improve strategic planning, and drive growth on the most important customer channels. I actually encountered Kenshoo back in my days at Johnson & Johnson back in 2015. I'm actually familiar with this suite, and it was our reporting tool for search success or failure. Nich Weinheimer is a 15-year veteran of the e-commerce and ad tech industries, helping build venture-backed software as a service companies in Amazon's backyard, Seattle. Nich developed a consulting agency in the early days of Amazon FBA, supporting sellers as they shifted into this new outsourced fulfillment model, and later developed and owned an operated brand for the Amazon marketplace. After building experience integrating feeds with Amazon and other retailers, his Amazon agency experience, and from his earliest work with display ad tech, Nich joined Kenshoo, of course now Skai, in 2018 to bring their leading enterprise search advertising technology to Amazon. Nich now leads strategy for Skai as the company doubles down on connected commerce across its platform suite of retail intelligent data and ad solutions. And joining us here to speak about all things retail media, and Peter's got a big grin because he knows whose favorite topic it is, ads, connected commerce. We will decompose that word for you, and insights from their recently concluded survey with BWG. Please join Peter and me in welcoming to the podcast Nich Weinheimer. Nich, welcome to the CPG Guys podcast.
Thank you guys for having me. What a pleasure just even hearing your setup. And I was telling you before we joined, I'm down in LA today as well on the heels of the Super Bowl. So feeling the excitement in the air, but super grateful to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
Don't make our audience jealous of the 55-degree weather, which happens to be better than most of the country.
You can come visit me in Seattle anytime, and I'm sure we'll show you the alternative.
Did you bring your parka and gloves so you can blend in with the locals in 55 degrees?
Not quite.
Or your wetsuit for the ocean?
Exactly, yes.
Thank you for that, Nich. We'll, of course, include hyperlinks to your LinkedIn page, the Skai site, and LinkedIn pages in our episode digital liner notes for the purpose of our audience. Let's jump right in. And my favorite topic, retail media. So I'm excited. And let's go to number one. And of course, it's going to be on retail media. Surprise, surprise, Peter. A few years ago, retail media was pretty much non-existent. I would say about a decade ago, this word wasn't coined. And about 7 or 8 years ago, we saw the early days of search. The advent of retail media was spurred on by Amazon's real entrance into this and evolution into ads, now Amazon ads, from feed-sponsored ads to the full ad stack that it is, which has basically revolutionized that word. Can you give us not the 101, but the 201? Where is the industry on retail media?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I think looking back at Amazon's history, I mean, this isn't just, a 2015, 2016 onset for them with, the amazing growth that they had as a business as early as 2008 when they really started thinking about monetizing their owned and operated sites. This is basically not a new thing for Amazon to think about advertising as a part of their business, but for the longest time, that was effectively a media group from the early days of those of us in the area. Adzennia, the agency of the earliest days, to what we kind of morphed into the Amazon Media Group in sort of more of a managed media sales organization, providing brands, both endemic and non-endemic, the opportunities to advertise predominantly through display, against their valuable first-party data. Again, all of that kind of in that classic sort of managed capacity as a publisher. What I think you see as their marketplace and kind of the scale of sellers mixed with global brands growing to the size that the marketplace is today, the opportunity to really take advantage of the traffic and the fact that more than half of initial product searches were happening on their properties, specifically on Amazon.com. A huge opportunity to create effectively a search experience that is a very close analog to what marketers and brands and digitally fluent companies were doing with Google and increasingly with Facebook over the years. And I think Bezos made a pretty kind of brazen move when you look at sort of the traditional history between retailers and brands and their typical negotiations, right? And from the agreements on providing co-op as a percentage of your agreement from brand to retailer, right? That's been sort of the classic way that a retailer would effectively negotiate price points. And there wasn't a lot of kind of teeth in those agreements. And Bezos said, you know what? We're going to provide the tools to these marketers, to these brands to spend, to kind of, put on the boxing gloves, so to speak, and go out there and, try to compete for customer eyeballs on their platform, separate from those agreements. And that took a little bit of pushing against his organization. When you look at category owners who were like, are you kidding me? You want to let somebody else decide what product gets placed in my, gold standard upper left position in the grid? And so that brazen move really, I think, set the tone for the hyper growth that we've seen really in the last 4 years, really when retail media kind of became, sort of a word in the space. And I would say not only did the teams inside Amazon get on board, but so did the brands so did the sellers, and so did the rest of retail who are in fast follow mode, whether, and there's only a few that could build the way that Amazon did, the scale that Walmart has, the unicorn nature of an Instacart. But the rest of retail is clamoring to figure out, how do I stand up a high margin ads business? How do I continue to compete in this world that increasingly Amazon sets the tone? And brands have been trained through Amazon and are clamoring, with their other partners, where the traditional notion of shopper marketing or vendor co-op dollars is being turned, on its head and complicated to a degree. So it's a very exciting space. It's a space I feel very lucky with my background to get to have spent the last 4 years really helping build with Amazon as a partner.
Nick, welcome to the CPG Guys podcast. I don't want you to think that Shri was so ridiculously excited to have you on to talk about his favorite topic today. But honestly, I don't think an entire jar of melatonin gummies would have calmed him down enough. So you're making his day. He has been giddy about this all week. So let's talk a little bit about, now that you've kind of defined where retail media is, would love to understand Skai's history and how it was really aligned to help capture and ultimately to scale retail media, starting from, the early stages of Kenshoo to where you're now at Skai's connected commerce platform.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a little known fact that and Kenshoo was founded by a kind of trio of Israeli folks, Yoav Itzar Prato being our CEO still today. Originally, it started out as a comparison shopping engine play, interestingly. So when you look at kind of the history of commerce marketing, right, the earlier days for me, right, helping syndicate feeds for retailers across the internet, and comparison shopping engines had their day in the sun, in the kind of the later aughts and maybe the early tens of this millennium. And so what started as a comparison shopping engine and a challenge to acquire traffic at scale with Google gave birth to what Kenshoo's earliest platform was around creating a much more streamlined way to buy ads on Google. They had a chance to share that technology with some investors at Sequoia, and very quickly those investors said, "Wow, you need to drop what you're doing over here and go turn this into, let us back you, and you turn this into a SaaS platform." And very quickly, early on, actually, as an early connection point to what became a part of Amazon, we had design partners at Zappos that were like, "Hey, we're growing, we're becoming a really important portal. We'd love to challenge you to help us do A, B, C, and D." And it really, I think, helped the early development of Kenshoo into the enterprise search stack that it is today, and that would included Best Buy and Macy's. Like so much of our early biggest partners were retailers. Fast forward a few years, and a lot of the great partnership and growth that we helped build with Google's ads business, a lot of folks left Google and went to Facebook, and we're going to kind of write that same script again. And they said, "Hey, Kenshoo, come work with us, come build a Facebook marketing platform." And so we obliged, built a Facebook marketing platform. We're still one of the top 3 FMPs with the kind of the meta world as it is today. And on the heels of that, and a lot of strong growth with now a search and social stack, we acquired an apps download product, which really has seen a big resurgence in the last few years as Apple search ads have come out. So starting to kind of round out more of a full stack. And then in 2016, actually, Paul Kotis at Amazon, who has been the leader of the ads business for a long time, called Yoav and said, "Hey, Amazon's ads business is going to blow up. You guys have done this with Google and then with Facebook. I think we have something here. This is going to be huge." And Yoav was like, "Yep, we're going to double down. We're going to make this bet." And we were early design partners on their APIs for their ads products, and went to market as kind of the first enterprise stack in late 2017 with that, bringing kind of the sophistication of forecasting, algorithmic bidding, and sort of the data portability and multi-tenancy that kind of enterprise software provides. So with that backdrop, with those technology stacks and the kind of the rate at which our retail media business has grown over the last 4 years, we really kind of find ourselves situated in a really valuable intersection between retailer, brand, and like the most valuable kind of digital marketing channels that are out there. And to that end, in 2020, we acquired a company called Signals Analytics that helps connect thousands of disparate, really interesting market signals, to a brand's go-to-market and to help them drive their strategy. And on the heels of that acquisition, we rebranded as Skai, which could be looked at almost fortuitously as Signals, Kenshoo, Actionable Intelligence. So a bit of a initialism there. And so that's where we are today as Skai, rapidly kind of focusing our energy towards this notion of connected commerce, and in helping brands, retailers, aggregators, agencies kind of be successful in this space.
Hey, Nick, we're an educational podcast, and so we like to break down acronyms that some of our audience may not be familiar with. You threw out one called FMP. Can you help explain what that is and why it's important?
Sure. Yeah, and I said FMP in reference to the Facebook marketing platform that we had developed for helping all sorts of advertisers, not just retailers or brands, but certainly that's a big focus for us is our e-commerce customers, but helping them buy media through Facebook, through its evolution. And Facebook, obviously, as we've seen now, Meta has seen quite an evolution of their ads products. From my earliest days in display, seeing they were called faux text ads with the little photo, a little bit of text, and they ran on the right rail of the news feed to where we are today with their very engaging, dynamic ad units.
Nick, first let me congratulate Kenshoo, now Skai on all the success y'all have had in the years. I think when brand leaders like me take a deeper dive into their ad network system, it somehow connects back to Kenshoo and Skai in some way for the purpose of actually analyzing and looking at how your search is doing, even back in the days. So Skai, odds are Skai exists somewhere in your brand's ecosystem, but there's so much more opportunity what one can be doing with Skai. And that's the nature of my next question, which is client profiling, holding companies, independent agencies, direct brands. Is there a pattern in adoption as nascent channels and strategies emerge? Outsourcing, insourcing? Why are some clients of yours so inclined to work with an enterprise platform versus other options?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's one I've lived over the last 4 years, really guiding the growth of our retail media business. But I have a lot of colleagues that have been at Kenshoo previously and now Skai for a decade plus. And so they've seen that movie before in terms of a nascent channel and then sort of evolution through adoption and that curve. And I think if you drew the curve out and you saw kind of Google spanning X amount of time, Facebook moved a little bit steeper of a curve, and certainly within retail media, just in 4 years, that curve has been that much steeper as digital marketers have seen what's happened in the space. And I say that because there's typically a pendulum swing where when there's lack of expertise within an agency or a brand, but predominantly within the brand who's wielding these dollars, and without that expertise, they're often saying, I have to go find the partner who knows how to do that. And there have been some amazing winners in this space who were early to market as boutique agencies that focused squarely on the starting line of retail media. Many of which have been acquired by holding companies who said, we lack this expertise, but we have these great brand relationships for their broader marketing efforts. We see this as a growth opportunity. Maybe we need to acquire a boutique sort of Amazon agency. Let's say a great example is the acquisition that WPP made through Wunderman Thompson Commerce early on of Marketplace Ignition. And there have been many others like that. We see, Orca Pacific exiting into S4, Capital, Sir Martin Sorrell's new holding company. So what we see in this evolution, though, is as brands kind of work through the earlier stages of test and learn and kind of outsourcing to these partners, it ends up kind of the pendulum swings back and becomes still at around 50-50 when we look at our more mature channels like a Google, where it really becomes an identity question for the brand. Are they more comfortable with outsourcing that until they have kind of learned what expertise is required and that their identity is more of an in-source organization? Are there challenges with the data that they would need to port out into partners that they're not comfortable with, compared to another brand who may say, you know what, our whole identity is outsourcing and we're very good at democratizing our data for partners. And I feel like that ends up being a really, sort of important signal in terms of which route brands go. But for us, we serve holding companies equally with independent agencies as well as direct brands. We are a pure software as a service company, so we don't go to market with like a hybrid managed service offering. We will transitionally serve customers with some managed service as they're in between agencies, for example. That in general, the same kind of value props for the enterprise platform are important to each of those entities, and sometimes in different ways. For an agency, it's multiple different clients and the multi-tenancy that our platform offers for that, and rationalizing kind of their whole business in the platform. Or for a brand or maybe a brand holding company that has many different brands, and they want to be able to very quickly hit one button to group by some category across, disparate brands. A lot of that can be done with the kind of a meta-analysis and tools that we have in the platform.
So let me just, for the purpose of our audience, just call that out one more time, right? Like the greatest strength of working with you versus many of the other providers in this retail media ad tech space is you're going to provide a enterprise-wide view of every single brand a given holding company or a company could have, and you can go up and down the brand hierarchy as well. And I think that's pretty awesome and powerful. Peter, thoughts?
No, I agree. If you don't have an understanding of the entire universe, and particularly the hierarchy of that universe, it's going to make it that much more challenging for you to win in this space. Hey, Nick, I understand that in partnership with BWG Strategy, that Skai just released a State of Retail Media report where you surveyed or spoke with over 150 plus marketer, agency, brands, and aggregators. Would love for you to share with them. By the way, we will include a hyperlink in the digital liner notes of this podcast where people can learn more about this report. But could you share with us some key highlights or insights that have come out of this analysis?
Yeah, I'm excited about this. I mean, we often get get asked to comment on our index. We release a quarterly trends report from our index. Just for some context, we through our platform, brands or agencies, aggregators, accelerators, retailers are managing over $7 billion of spend across all of these different channels within retail media, a $1 billion run rate. So we have a pretty strong index that we can often help folks benchmark, kind of understand what trends are happening. So definitely keep an eye out for our quarterly trends report. This one was a new one for us, and one we hope to do relatively frequently. As retail media continues to expand and mature. I think the exact number was somewhere around 163 responders across, kind of a variety of different entities, as you mentioned, Peter. And some of the high-level insights, some of them not surprising, some kind of make sense if you're in the space. For those who aren't, asking questions like what was the most important impact of your investment in retail media? And there's a variety of different strategies that marketers employ, from loyalty on one end of the spectrum to just, performance, return on ad spend. And by and large, advertising cost of sale, ACOS, or return on ad spend, ROAS, were kind of the most important KPIs. So still, this is being very much seen as a performance-oriented media channel, though, kind of liner notes there, within Amazon's ecosystem and now increasingly others, the upper funnel, the focus on upper funnel engagement on Amazon's DSP or their connected TV experiences is a huge area of growth potential. One of the questions that was asked was, what do you think of the quality of your results, of your ability to invest and find success here? Spanning kind of poor, fair, good, and excellent. Fortunately, poor only got 2%. Fair, there's about 25% of respondents who said, it was okay. But good to see that in the good categories, about half, and then excellent in 22%. So to me, that shows a lot of opportunity for growth, especially if you kind of averaged out half of that good and all of the fair. You have about half of the respondents going, there's another half of this spectrum I could be voting on to get to that excellent state. And I would layer in here actually a different report that I read on Marketplace Pulse, talking about the inflation of Amazon ad costs. Some of them, quoting as high as 50% year over year, increase or inflation in Amazon advertising costs. And something that was exciting for me, and as we work with our marketers, as a side note, we wanted to look into our index and saw that on average, our year over year inflation on Amazon was about 11% for our clients. So that's a good example of where, having enterprise ad tech in play can help you beat the market. Another area that we asked was plans for growth. Where do you see retail media continuing to be an area of increased incremental investment year over year? And it looks like all signs point to definitely, with 75% of respondents saying that they're increasing some or a lot for next year. So one of the other areas that we always get asked, because unlike integrating a search platform with Google and Bing in a bit of a duopoly, or Facebook, Instagram, pretty strong. I mean, obviously there's some other players and TikTok growing rapidly, but there is so much fractured opportunity in the supply side of retail media. So one of the questions we get asked a lot, when you think about expanding across the breadth of retailers, is what kind of fluidity do you as marketers have to manage across these different retail organizations? And I thought it was actually pretty interesting that 50% said somewhat fluidity and 28% said very fluid. Which, when you look at the history of how brands typically manage their relationship with retailers, they have a sales team for a retailer, and typically it was trade spend going into those retailers that were the kind of first investments into retail media. But seeing that that's become more fluid is telling to me that brands are undergoing major shifts into codifying e-commerce teams and functions, and their marketing organizations are starting to really rationalize this sort of cross retail opportunity. And when you start thinking about live data signals coming into the space, if I know that my competitor X brand on Y retailer the retailer has that product on promotion, maybe I should be spending these retail media dollars over on retailer Z, where competitor B is out of stock. And so it's those types of signals that I think start to become really interesting. And I think we'll start to see a lot more automation. And we're actually piloting a lot of that with our platform. And then looking at some of the biggest challenges that these marketers are facing, I think that the largest cohort here said 44% of them, the biggest challenge is driving positive ROI. You have a lot of brands that are, fast moving consumer goods, low price point. How do you then start to add a significant percentage of that into media costs and maintain your profitability in partnership with your retailer? 33% said proving incrementality. That's an area we're super passionate about as we develop incrementality measurement technologies and sort of looking ahead to a cookieless future, always on incrementality testing. But that's definitely still a big challenge in this space as retailers think about what kind of data they're willing to share and how they really help you think about measuring to the bottom line. And then what I found was interesting was 29, just under 30% said that measuring success in a way that's meaningful to my organization. Like it's okay to measure ROAS. That's an interesting KPI for the media in a box, but well, how do you measure success in a meaningful way against not just the JBP between you and the retailer, but for you as a brand? What are the goals for that brand manager, or for the holistic view of a whole category owner inside a brand? So I think some of these data points are really interesting beyond just the retail media. And I mentioned briefly kind of connected TV earlier. Another interesting insight was the largest jump in sort of expected growth in formats is in video. So I think, the efforts that Amazon's making in recruiting top executives from YouTube into lead sales and focusing on their DSP and OTT investments, it's clear that brands are hearing that. And these engaging video formats, the TikTok, style, like very influencer-oriented, authentic content, I think is going to be a huge part of our future. I'm really, really passionate about what's going to be happening there. And then we asked some questions about what tools these marketers are using, and it was really telling to see that 52% of them are saying they're still using native tools. They're still logging in directly to these retailers, Amazon, Walmart directly. But of that cohort, 70% said within this year or next year they're going to be seeking out a third-party provider. Which selfishly we're very excited about that. We're more than happy to consult and help you think about that opportunity. And there's a ton more in this report. I won't belabor it in the interest of time. We'll be dropping the full report at our conference, or right around our conference, which is called Shoppable. It'll be in New York on February 24th. A one-day conference, very experiential, lots of great speakers. So we'll have that available for that.
Wow. That was a what I would call a power pack punch right there. But so now our audience is going to now wait in curiosity. How can I get my hands on a copy of that report? So how do we do that, Nick? And can we actually release it right here on the CPG guys as well?
I think we should do an exclusive with you guys. Maybe one time, Sri, I'll get you to wear the Skai shirt instead of stuff, and we'll get the report released.
We love wearing swag. We are all about swag, not to like toot our own horn, but you give it, we'll wear it.
You guys certainly have good swag yourselves, and what you shared with me prior, some great T-shirt concepts, by the way.
Yeah, living in California now, I get to wear T-shirts most of the time, which didn't happen in the Northeast. So that's my daily wear apparel. But Nick, genuinely, that was a power-packed set of insights to share with our audience. So let me remind our audience that we're speaking with Nich Weinheimer from Skai and decomposing everything retail media and Skai's role in it. So I'm going to jump to a word that's now floating in the industry last couple of years as what was once the artist formerly known as e-commerce. Retail media is a piece of it, but today's action is all about connected commerce. How is Skai helping brands and retailers adopt and address connected commerce?
It's a big topic, honestly. I think, I've heard everything from let's drop the E, it's just commerce now, whether that's looking at the way these organizations, both retailers and brands, are thinking through a more holistic omni-channel view of the performance of a brand. E-commerce is not just this aberration of your organization that are some millennials off in the distance over here. This has staying power. This has growth. This is evolving how brands are going to market, how retailers are working with brands. We're in a major paradigm shift. And for Skai, we already kind of talked about the history of who we are and who our earliest design partners were. And then certainly the last 4 years, developing and evolving and growing our retail media platform. That intersection point of supporting brands, retailers on acquiring their customers across these most important channels puts us in a place to really help define what connected commerce is. The consumer journey is nonlinear. It's not, drive to the store, see the end cap, purchase the product, go home. It's I'm on Facebook, I'm on TikTok, I'm reading a blog, seeing a display ad. I am in store. In some cases, I'm on Instacart shopping because it's in a pandemic, right? That nonlinear customer journey really creates a big kind of disconnect in how you talk to a customer. And then, all right, let's layer in, a paradigm shift in how digital marketing is done altogether when we get rid of cookies. So we have these big sort of major trends and challenges, creating kind of the super wave in what e-commerce is going to look like going forward, and how brands are going to think about and retailers are going to think about capturing their share of it. And you look at the pandemic just as a great example. There's a wonderful graph that we often share around. Not that there's much wonderful at all about the pandemic, but within the first 2 quarters of the pandemic, and certainly lots of very specific awful things happening in terms of disruption in the markets. We saw 5 years adoption of e-commerce in 2 quarters, and when a lot of folks thought that we were going to see that maybe just drop off and it was just a blip on the radar, we've really seen that sustained growth. There was some really interesting data coming out right after the pandemic, out of Amazon around new to brand customers. It was one of the first sort of measurements that Amazon was rolling out through their sponsored brands ad unit. And what we floated around for our brands, around a 6% average new to brand customer for that ad unit, it jumped to about 15% and then stayed above 10% ongoing thereafter. So you were seeing more and more folks regularly adopt e-commerce. And what they say, if you do something for 3 weeks, it becomes a habit. Well, the habit has definitely stayed. And when we looked internally at what we built with retailers over the years, and serving brands across a variety of different channels, as well as retailers, we saw that more than half of our business was commerce. And we had, for a long time, kind of separated silos of our different platforms. You want to buy our search platform? Great. Social, we called it e-com, and then apps, and then some of our measurement tools. And we decided that really this is much more connected, that we should pull our they were all built on the same platform. We should pull these disparate solutions into one platform, one go-to-market. And with the more than 1,000 brands that are on our platform today for retail media and a few thousand more across the other products of ours, it became clear that really telling that story, that's who we are going forward on the heels of the acquisition of Signals Analytics and this sort of market intelligence data around products and trends. We saw the opportunity to kind of directly focus the wedge of Skai going forward as a meaningful kind of helper of the definition of connected commerce, I guess you could say, helping those brands and retailers navigate that disconnected consumer journey and connect it together with their media investments.
All right, Nick, let's go back in time to 1943. Don't really care how we got there, hot tub, DeLorean, let's just go. That's when noted American psychologist Abraham Maslow created the hierarchy of needs that drive human motivation. Fast forward back to our time in 2022, let's talk a little bit about brand data hierarchy of needs and the opportunity to connect data to taking meaningful retail action. What is Skai's role in this process, and how do you help make it easier for brands to satisfy their needs?
Love the question. It's whether it's Maslow or Pavlov, you don't ring a bell. I might sip my coffee, but I think that the hierarchy of needs was really well depicted in the evolution just over the last 4 years. Just having an enterprise advertising technology platform, zoomed you ahead from 1943 to 1985 in your DeLorean, but that was just looking at marketing data. That was, let me pull down the impressions, the clicks, the conversions that Amazon gives me, and then I'll use some enterprise ad tech, and wow, all right, we're off to the races. But as I mentioned before, these marketers, these brands, they've seen digital media before in the past, and they know what they're trying to do on a retailer as a publisher compared to maybe what they would do with display advertising across a New York Times or a CNN, or even in search or social channels. Retailers represent a much more complicated calculus. There is that relationship, and that is more of, a contentious relationship. You're negotiating with this publisher to buy your goods if you're a big brand, and you're constantly, fighting that battle. And marketing spend was always a lever in that space. And so very rapidly, what the baseline hierarchy of needs, I just need to nail this like investment in my media. And I'll look at this hierarchy of needs predominantly through kind of the lens of retail media. I'm sure there's a whole other conversation that, Sri and you, Peter, can talk about on broadly brands' hierarchy of needs. But very rapidly, the brand said, I need to know and understand, like, what is my take rate on this category, or what's my share of voice, category share, market share. Those types of signals were more so important as like the true north than just your return on ad spend. I can get you an amazing return on ad spend or an efficient advertising cost of sale, but I may be just helping you lose more and more share in your category if you're not aware of who the other players are, who the other products are in the space. And that's something that natively Google is going to share because they are a pure ad business. You're not negotiating contentiously with Google. They will tell you the impression volume for diapers in California. Amazon doesn't want Kimberly-Clark or P&G to know exactly how many diapers get sold in California, because that would be leverage, right? So you start to have this dearth of data that's available. And so very rapidly, partners like us started to help deliver data that augmented what a retailer could natively give a brand, and then deliver that sort of second tier in maybe a three segmented pyramid of a hierarchy of needs. And then even more quickly than that, it became clear that, great, thanks. All right. And it's always, what have you done for me lately? Right. And so like, thanks for helping me get to that measurement paradigm that I'm looking for around share. Now I want to skate where the puck is going. What's the trend that's happening? How can you help me make a better decision? Whether that's a budget decision or a media mix decision across these different retailers or ad types. Right. And for us, that really helped drive our strategy around the Signals Analytics acquisition. If I could tell you, Peter, that at the very beginning of the pandemic, all of a sudden there was this spike in key opinion leaders talking about lavender scent for de-stressing. And you could go very rapidly back into your organization because you run this great brand that has all these great products. And you say, you know what, we need to get lavender scent and talk about de-stressing on it for the packaging of a version of a product, and then use that in all of our copy for advertising. If you did that while there was that, you were the kind of one of the first or the first few to see that trend happening, and how, blogs were talking about the value of that scent as you were stressed out in a pandemic, you would take an outsized portion of share. And we have cases across the history of Signals Analytics before they were part of us, where they helped brands do exactly that and think through, where's the market going? What are the trends that are happening? And how do I take advantage of them and rapidly take that retail action, which some of the biggest retail levers brands have to pull today are retail media. And so just connecting those levers with those insights that really helps us deliver that full pyramid hierarchy of needs. Nail the ads data, make sure you're measuring to share, but also know where the puck is going, and be able to skate there.
Shri, I had 2 dog sees a squirrel moments. And the first one, it's when I started thinking of Janet Jackson and the song starts running through my head. And then he gets me again when he pulls out a Gretzky maneuver. And it just reminded me to tell the audience about the fact that if you missed it, the Canadian women's hockey team won the gold medal, beating Team USA. Yes, I'm a frustrated Canadian expat. Still a little upset on the men's hockey, but we'll take the gold in women's hockey. Shri, over to you.
The key question, Peter, is who won the curling gold medal?
Well, it wasn't the Canadians.
I actually watched 15 minutes of curling yesterday.
Oh, this morning? That was good.
Yeah, I learned what the sport is about. It's actually pretty cool, and how fast you got to be as you move along. But one of the things, Nick, that I've learned from you guys, and the data that's gathered from the survey, is 12.5% of all digital dollars spent, or 1 in 8 dollars spent, is actually going on retail media. I'm personally anticipating this is going to explode. It's going to be 25% within the next 12 months, or calendar year 22, and this is going to be the most important segment of digital dollars spent. So I want to, why, if that's the case, if it's going to be 25%, it's going to be 30%, I think reason and logic would say CPG should care and lean in. How does Kenshoo come into the mix to make sure as that lean in happens? How can you deliver for them and make this process easier, less painless? Because there's a lot of money in the mix here.
I think there's 2 ways to look at this. And one of the things that I'm passionate about and actually working to build right now is our go-to-market with retailers and helping them think through evolving their technology stack to be able to capture demand in the way, and by demand, I mean our great brands that leverage our platform to advertise on Amazon, Walmart, Instacart, et cetera. I'll go back to curling with you guys. If you are a retailer and your job running the retail media business is the sweeper out in front of the stone, if you're sweeping with your kid's plastic toy sweeper and you're getting really intense and you crack your broom, right? You're not gonna deliver. I paint that picture just because I thought the curling conversation. I love curling, by the way. I've done it a couple times up in Seattle. You need to make sure you have the best tools available as a retailer to give the brands what they're expecting that they're getting from Amazon. And I think that's going to be the biggest evolution that we're going to see over the next few years. Much like, and a really strong analog here is like what happened in display ad technology over the years. Again, talking about New York Times, CNN, et cetera, where you see banner ads on those sites. The history of those publishers is they would sell directly to advertisers and they would hard code those ads in there. And that you were then limited by what you could sell. And then that moved to, well, maybe I can have a waterfall decision of lots of different partners that I could plug into this kind of dynamic spot. And then that kind of gave birth to ad networks, which then those were wrought with fraud and lack of transparency. And then that gave way to the technology that kind of more exists today, which is called header bidding. And basically to be able to say, when the page loads, an ad request goes out to N number of demand partners in exchange or a network, whatever it is, and everybody can bid back. And that machine then looks at all of those potentials to pair the user with the best possible ad for the best outcome for the publisher, right? And so that's a very simplified way of saying that there's advertising technology that has gone through a major evolution for sort of core display advertising that you see on the open web. For retailers, we're still very early on. There are some retailers out there that are still in that like hard-coded CMS stage of like, hey, I'll go to big brand X and I will sell you a takeover on category Y and I will code that into the page. We're somewhere on the continuum of that, maybe more of those waterfall decisions where a big retailer may have one or two technologies that you as a brand have to work with one or both of them. And it is an intermediation that is perhaps very sticky fingered in terms of getting your dollars actually working on the retailer themselves. Like you're experienced with Amazon, right? You spend $1, you're going to pay $1, and maybe you'll pay a commission to, your agency or, a technology provider that's helping you scale those and make them perform better. So I think the biggest area that not only certainly we're happy to expand on our platform for any CPGs listening to show you what we do with data and with the enterprise ad tech, but I'm very excited about what we're going to be doing with retailers to make sure that you have a more streamlined access to the rest of retail. And then you can do that all within one platform. You don't have to log into different versions of our platform to be able to manage across and take learnings from these different retailers that you're investing in. And in the future, I hope that we'll see any retailer with any sort of volume or traffic is able to control their ecosystem, make sure they're getting the margins that are very valuable and important to them on their retail media business, and that you as a brand have the most efficient and kind of streamlined path to activating your media dollars in kind of a on-demand manner with the transparent reporting that you're used to from the more mature channels. So yeah, I'm excited because we sit in that awesome. I talk about the commerce continuum, and it couldn't be more real to me in that you have a retailer and a brand on one end of the continuum, and maybe D2C somewhere in the middle, and they all have fundamentally the same goals. They want to sell more products online, and it's just what kind of dimension are you looking at? For a retailer, it's going to be Google, it's going to be Facebook, it's going to be open web display, and for a brand, it's going to be retail media as well as search and social. And for a D2C, it's all of the above, right? And so where are you on that continuum? We serve all sides of that. Our data serves all sides of that. So our independence and our ability to help you figure out what is your perspective on this continuum and how do you most successfully take advantage of it. We can be a strong partner for that. So that would be why I think the $1 and $8 are going to do well through a partner like us.
All right, Nick. Well, I have the honor of asking the last question, and we saved the very best for last because we'd like you to take our audience through all the various services that Skai offers and maybe even highlight what you'd consider to be a marquee partnership you have with a brand to illustrate that.
Yeah, absolutely. We went through a couple of the different technology stacks over the history, but to reiterate, our foundation is in search advertising technology. So think about automating your planning, your forecasting, your budget management. Anything you can filter and sort in a platform can be automated so that marketers can focus on strategic initiatives. We also provide a suite of enterprise measurement technologies that surround that core kind of search platform. So incrementality is a key area of investment for us, as well as auditing and experiments to think about always on testing for your business. And those solutions pair well with whether it's our search platform, our core social integrations, our retail media integrations, our apps download product. Those applications sit on top of our data fabric, which we mentioned a couple times, the Signals Analytics acquisition, connecting thousands of external data signals with your first-party data or the second-party data you might be buying from a Nielsen or an IRI, as an example, and giving you a product go-to-market knowledge graph database. If that's not a mouthful, I don't know what is, but it's a very powerful solution when paired with the applications for your go-to-market to really take insights and drive them to activation on these key channels. We recently released a case study with U-Theory on Instacart. So thinking about how to best manage a specific retail media channel, leveraging the platform. We have a variety of case studies on our website. So look for kind of what type of brand you are. You'll probably see a case study out there. We work with some of the world's largest brands. Think of like the L'Oreals and the Kimberly-Clarks of the world. down to agencies that aggregate sellers across marketplaces. So that in its simplest form, as we said at the top of the call, if we can help you organize and connect data and give you the activation applications to connect insights to activation on these most important channels, I hope that's what you'll take away, and that you'll get in touch if there's some interest in learning more specifically what that means for your business.
First, they have the BWD strategy, Peter, and then he casually drops in, hey, there's this report I have on our work with Instacart and a case study for you. There's probably 200 more in that vault people can benefit from. But what a power-packed episode, right, Peter? So we wanted a 202 on retail media. I feel like we barely skimmed the surface of that 202, right? We covered the spectrum of how to measure, what to measure, the platform, what different toolkits exist on the Skai platform. I feel we can talk about so much more, like getting into the actual measurement, who's doing it well, what's needed to do it well. The one of the big takeaways from this is the fact that $1 of $8 is in digital is going into retail media. This space is exploding, y'all, like exploding. So partners like Skai obviously have a role to play in managing this for efficiency and optimization. Peter's thought?
Couldn't agree more, Sri. If you don't understand the mechanics of how to execute effectively and invest efficiently in retail media, you're going to be left behind. This is non-negotiable, in the words of a very wise person I know.
Thank you, Peter. Of course. Let me remind our audience that the best way to stay in touch with everything that's happening in the industry these days seems to be on none other than the CPG Guys. How can you do that? cpgguys.com on your browser, and you can find all our content. And I'm going to request y'all for reviews. The best way for us to shape the show, decide what to talk about, who to bring on the show, and which topics work and don't work, is when you go to ratethispodcast.com/cpgguys and you drop us a rating and a review and tell us what you'd like to see in the future as well. Nick, thank you sincerely for joining us, sharing your wisdom in the retail media and ad tech space with us. And we'll, of course, have your LinkedIn profile as well as Skai details in the digital liner notes of this podcast. But thank you for joining us.
Thank you guys both for having me. We really had a blast.
Mr. Bond, pleasure, sir. Week over week. When we put out power-packed episodes like this, I feel like we barely skimmed the surface of retail media. We got to figure out how to do more of this and get deeper into retail media.
Sri, we launched a second podcast in January for Europe, FMCG Guys. I'm sensing a third podcast wholly devoted to retail media. That may be, did I just give away a secret? Oh no. Uh-oh. Nobody heard that. Nobody heard that.
I don't know,
Free,
Nick, would you be up
pleasure.
for it? We don't know. Let's chat. Maybe there's so much education, like that number, $1 in $8 growing to probably $1 in $4. Optimization is the key. Tools, techniques, methodologies, case studies. That is the future of the space, guys. But thank you, Peter. Thank you, Nick. And for all our audience, thank you so much for listening in to this episode of the CPG Guys. We will see you soon on another episode.
The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from CPG Guys LLC or the individual author, hosts, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by CPG Guys LLC. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views expressed by CPG Guys LLC do not represent the views of their employers or the entity they represent. CPG Guys LLC expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we present in this podcast.